I don't think there's anyone who wants to live in a messy, unclean, hoardy environment. But I think it just becomes people's reality.
Time is money, so spend yours listening to me talk about things that are important to me and my people.
Time is money.
Hello and welcome to the first episode of 2025. 2025 has got a bit of a ring to it. I'm excited about this year. There's a lot of good things coming. I'm not going to pretend that January is my favourite or that it's ever a great month. I mean, if we look at it from just a money perspective alone, it's about 15 weeks long. And we got paid before Christmas. So we have no money by the 10th day of January. And that's a hard place to be, especially because January is like so long. So that is a bit of a kicker. Then you add in the fact that it's a cold month. I mean, today when I'm recording this, it's brighter than it's been thus far. And I know the days are getting longer. So that is also a positive. But typically, I don't think anyone is like, oh yeah, January. Do you know what I mean? I don't think January has the best PR personally. We're going to move with it. 2025, as I said to my partner the other day, we're living in a time where to see a new year is a blessing. So I very much believe that. Happy New Year to everybody listening. Thank you for coming with me on this journey. I am grateful, I'm positive, I'm happy, I'm excited. I feel like we're in a good place. We can do this. 2025, it's got a nice ring to it. I just wanted to kick off with the prospects for Maya's Minutes this year. So this year, I'm very focused on reaching out to the community and building community. Because at the end of the day, I'm not going to get anywhere unless I listen to what you guys want. I shared on the socials the few big things that happened in 2024. And I shared about Minisodes being arguably one of the biggest shifts of this podcast. If you're a old timer on the pod and you've been here from the beginning, you know that the basis of this podcast was series. And I had a big topic, I had an expert guest in that topic, and we went into the topic more and more episode by episode. And I thought it was the greatest idea ever. And I still think there's a lot of good content, knowledge gems, and just a lot of weight behind those kind of conversations. But I'm also not blind to the fact that it's not very respectful of people's time, because not everyone's got 4 hours, obviously not in one go, but people don't have the time and or the capacity to give to a series. It's a bit much to expect that so soon on when you're launching a brand new podcast. And I used to get really disheartened when I spoke to people and they'd be like, a series? Like if I spoke to a potential guest, they'd be like, how much do you need from me? And I'd be like, 4 hours. And they'd be like, what? They couldn't understand like that. And I would be like, well, you know, and I explain the whole basis of things, which is annoying in general, because it's like, I want you to come on the podcast. I've asked you if you've listened. You've said yes. You obviously haven't, because you don't know how this works. Anyway, whatever. And then they're like, no, I can't give you 4 hours of time. And I'm like, okay, fine, what can we do? They're like, I've never heard of this. Like, what is this? And it's like, it's annoying when people think that because they haven't heard of it, it's not something that can be done. Just because it's because it's not been done before. It doesn't mean it's not good. But long story short, it's harder to launch something that hasn't been done before, especially when it's ideas and things you want to do that there's no blueprint for it. And I'm the queen of not having blueprints, but sometimes you need a bit of a blueprint. And sometimes you need to listen to the people that are the consumers. And you guys, the listeners, are the consumers. So when Miranda told me, look, the series are great, I love listening to you, I love listening to your guests, but there's a big gap between series. I need something to tick me over. It was hard, and I was like hurt by the thought of it, because I didn't want to be recording from my house, and then I've got to edit again, and it's more work and all of that. But now I'm like, do you know what? She's a listener, and she's always bigging me up and telling me how much she loves the pod. She actually does listen. And if she's telling me that, I would be silly not to listen to her. So I did. And that's why I have the minisodes now. In 2025, I want to listen to the community more. I want to hear what you guys have to say. And I want to hear your perspectives on things. I want to hear what is working well and what isn't. And in 2025, I'm committing now. I don't know when, but at some point, I'm going to do an in-person event. I'm going to do a podcast live event. I'm thinking some of the previous guests from the series. I'm thinking a bit of fun. I'm thinking stalls. I'm thinking something in person. So I'm putting it out there. 2025. You're with me on the journey already. Thank you for all the listeners. If you're listening to this right now, thank you. If you've already subscribed, 10 points. If you haven't, pause what you're doing, hit the subscribe, hit the rate, hit the review, go on the socials. It won't be a little pause, it'll be like a 5-6 minutes. Socials, reviews. I'm on Threads now. I'm trying to build this community, so help me do that. So let's get into the episode. Today I want to talk about growing up in a messy home. Now, it sounds silly and it sounds a little bit trivial, but I was only until I moved in with my partner that I realised how much chaos I've actually grown up in. And this is not uncommon for people who come from quote unquote dysfunctional families. It's pretty common knowledge that people hoard because of emotional trauma, and hoarding material objects is a way of people feeling like they have control over things. They're not letting anything go. A psychologist could tell you more than what I can. This is just from like my own reading and my own experience. Long story short, hoarding and messy homes is a reflection of the mind. Equally, a clinically clean environment is also a reflection of the mind. It's the need so great for control that you are controlling every single thing. So neither is good. But I didn't know this. The vast majority of people live in something in the middle. Mine was very much on the deep end of the spectrum of mess and chaos. I'm such a capable person, if I say so myself, but I do still struggle with like some very basic things when it comes to cleaning and tidying and just the extra mile of putting things away and stuff like that. It's just not in me because it's just not been a habit. It's not been something I've made to do. It's not something I've grown up in. So I wanted to talk a little bit about that because I was also under the impression for a long time, which is also common, that when you live with family members or people who are severely messy and they're messier than you think they're the problem. And I'm not saying they're not, but you can't think that by being around that 24/7, there's not going to be some kind of rub off on you. There will be. And I had to learn that the hard way. So I don't want you to go down the road of thinking, oh no, when I've got my own space and when I've got my own environment, it's not going to be like this. Oh, I hate this. I would never want this. Because before you know it, you are doing things that you didn't like when you were there. So this is a reality that presents itself to me every day in my relationship. My partner did not grow up like that. He grew up in a very tidy, clean environment. And I think people that did grow up like that can never really relate to people who haven't. It's a superpower in one sense because I'm able to operate in severe levels of chaos. Like if this room right now was filled with stuff, I would still be able to talk to you like this. I would still be able to get on with my work. I'd still be able to block all of that out, find somewhere to sit and just get on with it. And that's how we are if you have grown up with that kind of dysfunction. However, it does mean that you don't have the innate understanding and the innate drive to create a nice environment for yourself. And then that can have an effect on everything else that you do. Because if you don't want to make a nice environment for yourself, then that can quite easily push to, I don't want to create a nice presenting version of myself. So now maybe you let yourself go in terms of self-care, looking after your hair, brushing your teeth, making sure your clothes are clean, things like that. And then it can go a bit further, which is like, I'm not motivated to be the best I can be or be the best version of myself. It doesn't really matter if I am or if I'm not. I know I need to focus on maybe some fitness goals or some mental health goals, but it doesn't matter. I can just pile that up with all the other things that I don't think about and that aren't a priority. And before you know it, it is a massive spiral. It's not by coincidence that people who are on, the shows like Top Hoarders, whatever that show used to be, it's not a coincidence that the majority of people who are on that show also have neglected aspects of their own self-care. Because it has an effect on you. You become the environment that you're around. And so I feel like just as this new year started was the first time I've really come to terms with that and I've really accepted that actually it is a big thing to not have a clean, clear, contained environment around you. Your environment needs to be, and your home particularly, needs to be your safe space, needs to be your haven. And how can it be when there's stuff everywhere? And It sounds like I'm being really ignorant to the reasons people live like this. 100%. Sometimes it is because people live in extreme poverty, for example. They don't have the money to make their environment nice. They don't have the capacity. People struggle with all kinds of issues and they don't have the capacity to make their environments nice. And obviously, I'm being understanding of that and I'm empathetic of that, obviously. I'm speaking to the people that have all of the capacity, have all of the options, could afford a cleaner, could afford a person to come and help them. But it's just the mental block that stops them from doing that. And it's because people don't realise that their reality is what it is. You just become used to it. And when my partner used to come to my house that I used to live in, he used to always say, like, how do you live like this? And I used to be like, what are you talking about? It's not that bad. You're the problem. You're so weird. You're so OCD. You think this is really bad, but it actually isn't. And then when I now don't live there and I go back, I'm literally sat there thinking, how do you live like this? And it's because you just become used to it. So if you're in a situation that I used to be in, I'm not saying this from a judgmental perspective of you're so messy or you're so this. I'm not saying that because I've lived that, I've been that. If I don't try really hard, I am that. But you need to remove yourself from the situation to know how bad it is. And you need to also keep your environment as, even if you live in a studio with someone else who's extremely messy and you can't stand it, you have to keep your little area clean for you, because then you maintain the ability to do it. You maintain the ability to know that this is how it should be. And you maintain the understanding that when I have my own space, it's going to be fine. But we don't live with people who respect the environment and they keep it not very nice. You can just give up because you feel like, I'm the one always trying to clean this. I'm always trying to make this nice. I'm always trying to sort this out. And you just get to a point where you're like, I'm not doing this anymore. This is long. I can't be bothered to do this. And the minute that happens, you become the same and it's dangerous. And then when you're not in that environment, you have to work 10 times as hard to get those habits realigned and be better and be tidier and be neater and care more about where you live and what your environment is. So I just thought it was important to shed some light on that because it's something we don't talk about. And that feeling that people who grow up in hoarding homes, I felt it my whole life. When you have friends and you go to your friends' houses and their houses are so tidy and so clean and put together, and then you come to yours and you're like, oh my God. And then when they come to yours and you see their reaction, and then when people come over and then your family or whoever you live with is like trying to scramble to sort things out and make things presentable, that is a fear and an embarrassment and a feeling that lives within you and never goes away. And it's hard to describe that to people. So I wanted to acknowledge people who feel that and live with that because it's very real. And I see you. And then I also wanted people who have no understanding for it and people who just judge people who live in mess to understand where it comes from. I don't think there's anyone who wants to live in a messy, unclean, hoardy environment. But I think it just becomes people's reality. And the root of it is a lack of self-love, a lack of self-care, a feeling that you aren't worth a nice environment, because that's what it comes down to, really. And there's so many reasons for that. There are groups of people which are told by society every day, you are not important. And that's obviously going to have an impact on people's psyche. So there's issues like that. And then there's also issues down to mental health, loss, trauma, grief. All these things play massive parts. So try to be kind, as always. And just understand that even if you don't understand something, it doesn't make it wrong. It just means it's different from your reality. And if a person is really struggling with something, it's not your job to help them or sort it out for them, but it's your job to be kind, because we should all be kind. And I think I'm going to leave it there. If you are someone who really relates to this, reach out. Maybe we can start a support group. And if you are new here, thank you. It's lovely to have you. Please subscribe. And I look forward to seeing you next week. Normal releasing shall resume now because the Christmas period is over and I'm not leaving my house in January. Like I said, I can't afford to go anywhere because I haven't been paid and won't be for years. Thank you, everybody. Wishing you a great start to the new year. And I will see you next week. Mwah.